Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Tes, and we'll begin approximately 9 lines down from the top. My Farhedrin. What is the meaning of the word Farhedrin? And the Mishnah had said that during the preacher of the 7 days when we take the Kohen and Gadol and we quarantine him before Yom Kippur, we put him in a lichka called Farhedrin. And the Gemara answers Pursei. And Pursei means those who are in charge of lower offices of the king, for example, that had an office to assess property and in order to collect taxes and other such kinds of activities. And these were hired by the king, individuals not at the highest level. They were replaced almost on an annual basis, like the Kohanim Gdolim of Bayis Sheni, so many of whom were tzdukim and didn't live out their year. They died every 12 months. They were not on a high level. They were like the Farhedrin. Omar Rabba Bar Bachan, Omar Rabbi Yochanan. And now we're about to embark upon a very long Agadata that addresses the Bayis Rishon, the Bayis Sheni, the destruction of the two Batim. And we've spoken now about Bayis Sheni in terms of Farhedrin and the Tzdukim and all that. So the Gemara quotes Rabba Bar Bachan in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Mai Dichsiv. What is the deeper meaning of a very challenging pasuk in Mishlei? And it says in the pasuk, Yiras Hashem tosif yamim ushnos rishayim tiktsarna, which literally translates as the fear of Hashem will increase days, but the years of the wicked will be shortened. And the pasuk begins with Yiras Hashem, complimenting and anticipating the great reward for Yiras Hashem, and then the Sefer of the pasuk addresses the Rishayim and how their lives will be shortened. So Rabbi Yochanan says the following: the Reisha of this pasuk, Yiras Hashem Tosef Yomim Zeh Migdash Rishon. There's something great about the first Beis Hamikdash that it's described by Shlomo HaMelech as Tosef Yomim. And Tosef Yomim means that relative to Bayis Sheni, there's going to be a certain kind of, shall we say, inherent advantage over Bayis Sheni. We can't calculate that in quantitative terms, in quantitative terms, in terms of how many years the Bayis Rishon stood. Sha'amar Arbamios v'Yeser Shanim, it only stood for 410 years, whereas the Bayis Sheni stood for 420 years. But rather, v'lo shimshu bo ela shmona sar kohanim gedolim. In a long period of over 4 centuries, there were only 18 kohanim gedolim, which means that on the average, each kohen gadol would serve in the Beis Hamikdash for a very long period of time, because 18 spanning over 400 years. So in that sense, we can describe the Bayis Rishon as Tosef Yomim. Tosef Yomim means we extend the days of the Kohen Gadol that he served in the Mikdash. But Rishayim, Shnos Rishayim Tiktsarna, Zeh Migdash Sheni, even though Sha'amar Arbamios v'Esrim Shon, it stood 420, that's 10 years longer than the first Bayis, but nevertheless, Shimchu Bo Yotzim Shlosh Meos Kohen. Imagine more than 300 Kohanim served in a period of 420 years. But same here, you have to subtract from those 420 years, Arboim Shana Sheshimei Shimon HaTzadik. So we have to subtract the 40 years of Shimon HaTzadik, Ushmonim, subtract another 80 years, Sheshimesh Yochanan Kohen Gadol, Eser Sheshimesh Yishmael ben Pavi. So these are all great tzaddikim. The Amarle, according to another version, we could add another 11 years. Sheshimek Rabbi Elazar ben Charsum. And Mikan V'elech Sevach Hashov. Now go ahead and calculate how many years are left. We've cut down the 420 by subtracting 40 plus another 80. That's 120 right there. You're down to 300 years. Then you want to subtract another 21 years. So you're down to less than 300 years in which there were Kohanim Gedolim that were evil. It must mathematically mean that all these Kohanim Gedolim, 300 strong, did not live out the entire year. And Chazal say that many of them died on Yom Kippurim when they went in and they did the avodah of the Haktoris in the Kodesh Kadoshim, Lifnai v'Lifnim, they did it the way that Stukim had it. And they perished. So this is the Rishayim, this is the pasuk that says, Shnos Rishayim Tiktsarna. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Tarsa, very interesting name. His father's name was Tarsa. That has to do with a whole incident in his life. Maybe if we'll have time later. Shiloh stood for 369 years, and it was the first serious Mikdash. Again, the first Mikdash technically was Gilgal, and that's where, when Yoshua crossed the Yarden, he set up for the first 7 plus 7 years of conquering Eretz Yisrael, 7 years of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. He set up a Mishkan at Gilgal. But after that Mishkan of Gilgal, when that 14-year period ended, the Mishkan was established in Shiloh. And then what happened was that in a battle with the Plishtim capsized the Aron Kodesh. And when the word got back to Eliah Cohen, who was in charge of the Mishkan in Shiloh, he keeled over and he died. He was in such a state of shock. What brought about the destruction of Shiloh shortly after the death of Eliah Cohen? There were two major sins. One is Gili Arayos, and the other is Bizayin Kodshim. And now the Gemara is going to go through these two sins, and both of them were unfortunately manifest in the behavior of Eli HaKohen's two sons, Chofni and Pinchas. And these sins brought about the destruction of Shiloh. Immorality, because Chazal teach us, and it's almost explicit in Psukim, Losaki Aretz Eschem and Kedoshim, that the land and the Shechina cannot tolerate immorality. And not only that, Bizayin Kodshim, there's no room for a Mishkan Shiloh when people don't have the awe and the respect that they have to have for Kodshim. Gila Rais Dichsiv. The pasuk tells us, this is a pasuk which, if you take it literally, it says, the Eli Zaken Miodu Shamav, and he heard Eli, Eis Kol Asher Yasun Banov L'Chol Yisrael. Okay, we'll see what that means. But what were his sons guilty of? Eis Asher Yishkevun Es Hanoshim Atzovos Pesach Ol Moed. That they slept with women. These are married women who gave birth and came to Mishkan Shiloh to bring the state Tzipor M'Shnei B'nei Yonah, the carbon of Yoledes. And again, it's hard to enunciate these words, but if you take the pasuk literally, which Chas v'Shalom we can, then it means that they, Eli and Chofni, had relations with these married women. Says Rabbi Yochanan that if you take this parsha literally, as if Chas v'Shalom Eli had two sons who slept with married women. That's impossible. You're making a big mistake. And therefore, we have to reinterpret the pasuk and figure out what the pasuk means when it describes the sin of Bnei Eli as Yishkavunim Noshin. What does that mean? And the Gemara says, Mitoch, and here we'll turn to Daf Tesom and Beis, Sheshiu Eskinehem. What happened was, and we'll soon see about the concept of Bizayon Kodshim, Hophni and Pinchas were so full of themselves. They didn't take the Kodshim seriously. They didn't have that awe that we should have for Kodshim. And as a result, they told the women who brought the Shtei Tziporim, you know what? Just rely on us. We'll bring the carbon. Now keep in mind that a Yoletis is called a Mechusa Kapara. Her purification process is only clinched when she brings two birds. And up until that point, she can't go into the Mikdash, she can't eat Kodshim. And the women realized that Chafni and Pinchas were taking their time. It was above them, and they were delaying the Kodshim. And they weren't convinced that these birds were going to be brought, or they didn't know when it would be brought. So what they did was, instead of returning to their husband after this period of time post-Leda to resume their intimacy, their family life with their husband, each one with their husband, they stayed overnight. They took a local inn somewhere in the vicinity of Mishkan Shiloh. And therefore, the Bnei Eli caused them that they would not be able to go back to their husbands immediately in order to fulfill the mitzvah period of Arivia. So in a sense, by stealing these women, married women, from their husbands, meaning delaying their return, it's almost as if they slept with them. That's how far the pasuk in Shmuel goes in describing their sins.